There comes a time when talking about it ain't enough. Dreaming about it ain't enough. Praying without moving ain't enough. And that time is now. God never created you to sit on potential. You were born for dominion, not delay. You were formed to lead, not linger. The treasure inside of you, it's not waiting for the right moment. It's waiting for the right movement. Potential is one of the most misunderstood and misused gifts that a human being possesses. Every person is born with it, an inner reservoir of possibilities, talents, and divine assignments that haven't yet manifested in the physical realm. But potential by itself is passive. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't move, build, or change the world. It just exists, like a seed sitting in a drawer full of life but producing nothing. When we talk about potential, we're really talking about what could be, what should be. It's the glimpse God gave you in your spirit of the person you were designed to become and the impact you were created to have. But until it's activated by decisive, consistent action, it remains nothing more than an idea, an invisible possibility trapped in the prison of inaction. The tragedy for so many people is not that they failed, but that they never moved. They never started the thing they were called to start. They waited for perfect conditions. They hesitated out of fear. They let time pass, hoping for motivation to show up. But potential doesn't respond to comfort. It responds to obedience. It responds to pressure. And most of all, it responds to action. There's something dangerous about becoming too comfortable with potential. It can make you feel accomplished when you haven't actually accomplished anything. People will say you've got so much talent, and you'll begin to take pride in what you could do without ever doing it. But the world is not changed by what you could do. It's changed by what you do. Untapped potential gives the illusion of greatness without the responsibility of discipline. Potential doesn't pay bills. It doesn't heal broken families. It doesn't build generational wealth. Only action does that. Only execution turns invisible dreams into tangible results. You can't deposit ideas into a bank account. You can't live off of inspiration. You must move from intention to impact. There are people who will live their entire lives knowing deep down that they were made for more, but never stepping into it. Not because they lacked ability, but because they lacked motion. They knew they had the gift, they saw the vision, but they let fear, laziness, doubt, or distraction keep them in the waiting room of destiny. And every year that passes becomes another missed opportunity to walk in fullness. Potential is like spiritual capital. It's not supposed to sit in storage. It's meant to be invested, just like the parable of the talents. What you don't multiply, you lose. If you bury your gift in the ground of excuses, it won't just stay buried. It'll begin to rot. Your anointing doesn't grow through stagnation. It grows through action, through risk, through obedience. Too many people are more committed to their comfort than they are to their calling. They'd rather protect their ego from failure than risk stepping into purpose. But you can't fulfill your assignment with a mindset rooted in safety. Purpose always demands pursuit. It requires courage. It asks you to move even when the outcome isn't guaranteed. We are not held back by a lack of information. We're held back by a lack of execution. In the age of unlimited knowledge, anyone can learn how to start, build, grow, or transform. But knowledge without action is just clutter. Wisdom only becomes power when it's applied. Potential only becomes progress when it's moved upon. The enemy of your destiny isn't failure, it's passivity. Failure is a part of the process, but passivity is a choice to reject the process altogether. It's a decision to delay, defer, and distract yourself until what could have been dies in the soil of hesitation. That is how potential becomes wasted, not because it didn't exist, but because it wasn't honored. You must understand that time is a partner to purpose, but only when used correctly. Potential is perishable. It doesn't last forever. The longer it sits unused, the harder it becomes to activate. The longer you ignore it, the louder the voice of doubt grows. And the more you wait, the more you settle for a version of life that's beneath your calling. People often pray for breakthrough, but God responds to movement. He honors faith in motion. The Red Sea didn't part until Moses lifted his staff. The walls of Jericho didn't fall until they marched. Miracles often meet momentum. Your job is not to figure everything out in advance. Your job is to move in faith with what you've been given. Excuses are the language of wasted potential. I'm too busy. I'm not ready. What if I fail? All of these are self-sabotaging phrases meant to keep you in the same place. But here's the reality. You don't need more time. You need more urgency. You don't need perfect clarity. You need bold obedience. Waiting will not perfect you. There is a weight to unused greatness, a heaviness in the soul of a person who knows they were called for more but chose to play small. Regret doesn't come from failing. It comes from not trying, from watching someone else live the life you knew you were supposed to step into. You were given potential as a gift, but it comes with responsibility. To sit on it is to dishonor the giver. To hide it is to rob the world of the difference you were designed to make. Your voice, your vision, your creativity, your leadership. They were never meant to stay in seed form. They were meant to be planted, watered, and grown into something fruitful. The world doesn't need another person full of good intentions. It needs someone full of action. Someone who understands that greatness is forged in the fire of discipline, not in the warmth of dreams. Someone who understands that comfort is the enemy of contribution. Every day you delay is a day of purpose lost. Every step you avoid is a step away from who you were created to become. The clock is ticking. The vision is calling. The assignment is waiting. Potential is not enough. Not anymore. Not if you're serious about living fully, loving deeply, and leading powerfully. Your next level will not arrive automatically. It must be activated. And that activation is not emotional, it's intentional. It's what happens when you finally decide that sitting still is no longer an option, that the cost of inaction is higher than the risk of failure, and that purpose, real purpose, can only be accessed on the other side of movement. Feelings are some of the most persuasive forces we encounter on a daily basis. They speak loudly. They feel real. They demand attention. And yet, they often have no loyalty to truth, no allegiance to your purpose, and no commitment to your destiny. Feelings are momentary. They shift like the wind, unstable and unpredictable. And when you build your life around them, you become just as unstable as they are. One of the greatest mistakes people make is trusting their feelings as if they are facts. Just because you feel tired doesn't mean you're done. Just because you feel afraid doesn't mean you're in danger. Just because you feel unqualified doesn't mean you're not called. Feelings are temporary responses, not permanent realities. And if you live your life responding to every emotional impulse, you'll sabotage your own success before it even begins. Discipline, on the other hand, is rooted in commitment. It doesn't care how you feel. It operates off decisions, not emotions. While feelings try to negotiate with your calling, discipline keeps moving forward. Discipline gets up when the alarm goes off, not because it feels good, but because it's the plan. Discipline shows up when motivation is missing. Discipline chooses to obey vision over mood. Most people don't fail because they don't have talent. They fail because they trust their emotions more than their instructions. Your feelings will always try to protect your comfort. Discipline will demand that you step into discomfort to grow. One is a liar, the other is a leader. One wants you safe, the other wants you stretched. You have to choose which one you're going to follow. We live in a culture that idolizes feeling. Follow your heart, they say. Do what feels right. But your heart can be deceitful. Your feelings can be manipulative. If you only do what feels right, you will quit every time it gets hard. You'll walk away from things that require endurance. You'll abandon purpose for pleasure. And you'll miss transformation because it felt too painful. Discipline doesn't need to feel good to be good for you. Some of the most important decisions you will ever make will go against your feelings. Waking up early to pray or plan won't feel good. Saying no to temptation won't feel easy. Keeping your mouth shut in an argument may not feel powerful. But discipline doesn't consult your emotions. It follows your principles. It honors your future more than your present mood. Feelings often tell you to stop when you need to keep going. They tell you you're exhausted when you're just uncomfortable. They scream that you're failing when you're actually being refined. They convince you to settle when discipline is trying to pull you into excellence. And that's why discipline is the truth teller. It keeps showing up long after emotion has walked out the door. People who win in life aren't the ones who always feel great. They're the ones who keep moving despite how they feel. Champions are not controlled by moods. They are fueled by mission. They understand that motivation is nice when it's there, but completely unnecessary for results. They don't wait to feel ready. They take action because they decided to, not because they were inspired to. Discipline does the heavy lifting that feelings try to avoid. It chooses the workout when the body is tired. It chooses the grind when the mind wants ease. It chooses the commitment when the heart wants comfort. Feelings seek the path of least resistance. Discipline chooses the path of greatest reward. And that's why the disciplined rise when others sleep, build when others drift, and succeed when others settle. There's a war between the part of you that wants to grow and the part of you that wants to stay the same. Your feelings fight for what's familiar. Discipline fights for what's possible. When you feel like quitting, that's not the truth speaking, it's the weakness reacting. And the only thing that overrides that weakness is the strength of a made-up mind anchored in purpose. Every successful person you admire has mastered the art of ignoring their feelings when it's time to work. They still feel fear. They still feel resistance, but they've trained themselves to act anyway. That's what discipline is. It's the internal muscle that moves you in the right direction regardless of the emotional weather forecast. The problem with building life around feelings is that feelings lie about timing. They'll tell you it's not the right time to start, not the right time to move, not the right time to invest. But discipline doesn't wait for timing. It creates momentum. It understands that done is better than perfect and forward is better than still. Discipline doesn't delay. It decides. Feelings are loud. They cry. They whine. They demand attention. Discipline is quiet. It doesn't need applause. It doesn't need hype. It just does the work. Day after day. Rep after rep. Decision after decision. And that quiet obedience, that daily choosing, that consistent follow-through, that's where transformation lives. You'll never feel your way into consistency. You'll only discipline your way into change. If you want to grow, you have to stop negotiating with your feelings and start commanding your actions. You can't lead yourself into destiny while asking your emotions for permission. Leadership means making decisions your feelings don't agree with because you know your calling demands it. It's not that your feelings don't matter, it's that they can't be in charge. You acknowledge them, but you don't obey them. You feel them, but you don't follow them. You let them exist, but you don't let them lead. Because when feelings lead, purpose suffers. And when discipline leads, purpose progresses. Every breakthrough you're praying for is on the other side of disciplined action. Every dream you're hoping for will require doing the things you don't feel like doing. Your feelings will always look for an exit. Discipline will always look for an edge. One keeps you average, the other takes you to excellence. What separates high performers from high potential is not emotion, it's execution. High performers understand that feelings are passengers, not drivers. They let them ride, but they don't let them steer. They keep their hands on the wheel of vision and their eyes locked on the road of purpose because they know that success isn't. Faith is not just a belief, it's a force. It is the conviction in the unseen, the assurance of things hoped for, and the confidence that what hasn't happened yet can and will come to pass. But faith, as powerful as it is, was never meant to be passive. It was never designed to sit still, quietly waiting in the shadows for life to change. Faith is designed to move. It's designed to work. It's designed to act. People often say they have faith, but their lives show no evidence of it. They talk about dreams, visions, and prayers, but they're still stuck in the same place they were years ago, not because God isn't faithful, but because they haven't moved. Faith is not merely spoken, it is demonstrated. If it doesn't move your feet, it's not faith, it's fantasy. There is a fundamental law in the spirit realm. God responds to action rooted in belief. When you move in alignment with what you believe, you give heaven permission to collaborate with your obedience. The moment you act on what you've been praying for, doors begin to open, resources begin to shift, and things that once seemed impossible begin to manifest. Not because you forced it, but because you moved. Too many people are paralyzed by preparation. They keep saying they're waiting on God when in reality God is waiting on them. You don't need more confirmation. You don't need another sign. What you need is to take the first step. The Red Sea didn't split until Moses stretched out his hand. The waters of the Jordan didn't part until the priest stepped in. Movement activates miracles. Faith without works is dead. It's not a metaphor, it's a principle. Without action, your faith is lifeless. It has no heartbeat. It's not producing anything. It's like a tree with no fruit, a light with no power, a voice with no sound. It looks like something, but it accomplishes nothing. Real faith shows up in what you do, not just what you say. People love to talk about what they're believing for, but if you believe it, why haven't you moved? Why haven't you written the plan? Why haven't you made the call? Why haven't you shown up in the room? Belief without behavior is deception. You're fooling yourself if you think faith is strong while your actions are weak. Faith is not the absence of fear. It is the decision to move in spite of it. Waiting until you feel fearless is not faith. That's comfort seeking. Faith moves when things are unclear. Faith builds when there's no blueprint. Faith speaks when there's no guarantee anyone will listen. And it keeps moving even when the outcome is uncertain because the direction came from God. You cannot say you trust God and still refuse to move. Obedience is the evidence of trust. If he said go, you go. If he said build, you build. If he said speak, you speak. Faith is not found in feelings, it's found in follow through. Delayed obedience is still disobedience. And disobedience always puts your breakthrough on pause. There's a reason the Bible is full of action words. Walk by faith, fight the good fight, run the race, lay hold of eternal life. Faith is a verb. It is a movement, a discipline, a lifestyle. It doesn't sit in the background hoping something will happen. It leans forward, prepares, takes risks, and expects God to meet it at the place of action. The enemy loves inactive faith. As long as you're believing but not doing, he knows you're not a threat. He knows there's no manifestation coming. Because as long as your faith stays in your head and not in your hands, nothing changes. But the moment you act, the moment you step, the moment you push, that's when power is released. When you believe for something but never move, you remain in theory. Theory doesn't transform lives, execution does. That business plan won't change your life until you launch. That message won't reach anyone until you speak. That calling won't fulfill its purpose until you take the first uncomfortable step. You can pray all day, But until you act, your faith is just noise. Faith is the currency of the kingdom, but obedience is the transaction. You can have a pocket full of faith, but if you never spend it, if you never apply it through action, you'll never access what God has for you. Believing God for increase, show him you're ready by managing what you already have. Believing for healing, speak life and walk in alignment with health. Faith always produces corresponding action. Every move you make in faith builds momentum in the spirit realm. It may feel small to you, but in God's economy, every act of obedience is multiplied. The 5 loaves and 2 fish didn't feed the multitude until they were given. The widow's oil didn't multiply until she started pouring. God works with what you move. The longer you delay your movement, the more your faith shrinks. Unused faith atrophies. It grows weak from disuse. It becomes more talk than truth. But the more you move, the more your faith grows. Action feeds faith. It makes it stronger, bolder, sharper. And each time you obey, you create a track record of God's faithfulness that makes it easier to trust him the next time. Some people are asking God for more while doing nothing with what he already gave them. They want elevation without movement, overflow without obedience, promotion without preparation. But God doesn't bless passivity. He blesses participation. He wants you in the process, not just cheering from the sidelines. If you truly believe the promise, you prepare for it. You position yourself for it. You align your life with it. Faith builds the ark before the rain comes. Faith steps out of the boat before the water solidifies. Faith doesn't wait for the conditions to be perfect. It creates the conditions through movement. You cannot stay still and expect things to shift. God is not a genie. He partners with action. And your first step might not move the mountain, but it will move you. And that's the power of faith in motion. It doesn't just change the situation. It changes you from the inside out. Discomfort is one of the most misunderstood experiences in life. Most people run from it, avoid it, or try to numb it. But discomfort is not your enemy, it's your invitation. It is the doorway to growth, the threshold between where you are and where you're called to be. Everything you desire on the other side of your prayers, purpose, breakthrough, expansion, greatness, will demand that you walk through discomfort to receive it. We are conditioned to crave comfort. We like the familiar, the predictable, the controllable. But comfort is deceptive. It can feel like safety when in reality it's often a cage. Comfort can lull you into complacency. It can trick you into believing that survival is success. But God didn't call you to survive. He called you to thrive. And thriving requires stretching. Destiny never shows up wrapped in ease. It shows up in challenge. It shows up in resistance. It shows up in those moments when quitting would be easier than continuing, but something inside you knows that quitting would mean forfeiting the future. The doorway to your next level is never lined with pillows. It's lined with pressure. Growth demands resistance. Just like a muscle must be torn to be built, your character, your capacity, and your calling must be tested to be developed. Discomfort is the gym where your spirit trains. It's where your will gets stronger. It's where your obedience becomes solid. Without discomfort, there is no development, only delay. The people who accomplish the most in life are not those who have the easiest path. They're the ones who are willing to be uncomfortable for the sake of their calling. They don't avoid pain, they use it. They don't wait for perfect conditions, they act in imperfect ones. They know that progress is born in pressure, not in passivity. You will never find destiny hiding in your comfort zone. It lives in the unknown. It calls you into deeper waters. It asks you to risk being seen, risk being misunderstood, risk being stretched, and yes, it will be uncomfortable. But that discomfort is not punishment, it's preparation. It's God molding you for what you asked him for. Every level of elevation comes with a requirement. You have to leave behind what's familiar. You have to let go of what no longer fits. That's uncomfortable, but you can't hold on to old mindsets while trying to walk into new assignments. Discomfort forces you to confront those pieces of you that can't go with you to the next level. There's a reason why people often say they feel like they're being pressed before breakthrough comes. Because pressure precedes purpose. The crushing comes before the calling fully manifests. Just like olives must be crushed to produce oil, and grapes must be pressed to produce wine, your anointing is often released in the place of discomfort. Don't despise the discomfort. Lean into it. Ask what it's teaching you. Let it reveal where you're still holding back. Let it show you the parts of your faith that are still untested. Discomfort has a way of exposing what's weak, not to shame you, but to strengthen you. It brings you face to face with your limitations so you can lean deeper into God's strength. Avoiding discomfort is how you stay average. Embracing discomfort is how you step into greatness. Everything meaningful you will ever do, starting a business, writing a book, stepping into ministry, raising a family, walking in purpose, will demand that you do hard things. And the people who win are not the ones who avoid pain. They are the ones who decide that purpose is worth the pain. Discomfort is the friction that sharpens your focus. When everything is easy, you don't grow. You don't change. You don't adapt. But when it gets hard, when it gets tight, when it gets uncomfortable, that's when you dig deeper. That's when you discover what you're truly made of. That's when you realize the power of resilience that's been inside you all along. The seasons that grow you the most are rarely the ones that feel good. They're the ones that stretch your faith, challenge your assumptions, and force you to rely on something bigger than yourself. That's where transformation lives. That's where purpose is forged. That's where destiny takes root, not in comfort, but in the discomfort that demands commitment. Every giant you're called to slay will first intimidate you. Every new room you're called to enter will first feel too big. That's part of the process. Discomfort signals that you've reached the edge of what you know. And now it's time to expand. The presence of discomfort doesn't mean you're in the wrong place. It often means you're right where you're supposed to be. Sometimes the very thing you're running from is the thing that's going to unlock your next season. That difficult conversation, that bold step, that uncomfortable decision, it may be the very move that opens the floodgates of favor. But you'll never know unless you stop resisting and start responding. If you wait to feel ready, you'll wait forever. Destiny doesn't come when you feel prepared. It comes when you're willing to be uncomfortable in pursuit of what you've been called to. The discomfort is not a delay, it's the doorway. And every step you take through it leads you closer to the version of yourself that you were born to become. You don't need another confirmation, you need courage. You don't need to eliminate fear, you need to take action in the presence of it. Discomfort won't kill you, settling will. Regret is far more painful than any challenge you'll face on the path to purpose. So, if you're feeling stretched, challenged, uneasy, good. It means you're growing. It means you're moving. It means you're alive. Success does not respond to your wishes, your dreams, or your good intentions. It doesn't bow to vision boards, declarations, or well-crafted affirmations spoken in the mirror. It submits to one thing and one thing only: action. You can mean well, plan well, and even pray well, but until you move, success remains unmoved. It is not seduced by what you hope for, it is commanded by what you do. So many people live with the illusion that intention alone holds power. They believe that meaning to start is equal to starting, that wanting to be disciplined is equal to being disciplined, that imagining success is the same as building it. But desire without execution is a mirage. It gives you the feeling of progress with none of the substance. It makes you feel productive while keeping you in the exact same place. Intention is a seed, but only action turns it into fruit. You can plant as many seeds in your mind as you want, but until you water them with action, nothing will grow. Too many people confuse potential with performance. They celebrate the idea instead of building the infrastructure to support it. But ideas, no one becomes great because they intended to be. They become great because they showed up consistently when others made excuses. They acted when it wasn't convenient. They moved forward when nothing around them looked promising. Intention is passive. Action is aggressive. It doesn't wait for a green light. It creates the green light. Action doesn't care how you feel. It doesn't wait for your mood to line up with your goals. It shows up even when motivation is missing. While intentions sit comfortably in your imagination, action gets up, gets dirty, and does the work. It pushes through resistance. It silences doubt. It overcomes delay. Success respects that. You don't need more time to think. You need to start doing. The problem isn't that you don't know what to do, it's that you haven't made the decision to do it. Intention is easy, it's clean, it's comfortable. Action is messy. It requires energy, it exposes your weaknesses, but it's the only path to real, lasting results. Everyone says they want success, but few are willing to pay the price of execution. They want the outcome without the process. They want the fruit without planting, watering, and pruning. But success cannot be hacked. It can't be tricked. It watches what you consistently do and responds accordingly. Not sometimes, not occasionally, but with steady, daily action. There is a generation of dreamers being held hostage by their own intentions. They think vision is enough, that potential is enough. But vision without movement becomes regret. Potential without execution turns into frustration. You don't get to talk your way into success. You have to walk your way into it. Every level you want to reach demands a version of you that acts, not just one that dreams. Your next level will not be accessed by imagination. It will be unlocked by implementation. The gap between who you are and who you want to be is not bridged by hoping harder. It's bridged by working smarter and moving faster. You must discipline your life around action. Build a bias for doing. Make movement your default setting. Train yourself to respond with decisions, not delays. When you feel hesitation creeping in, act. When fear whispers, not yet, act. When comfort says, maybe tomorrow, act. The more you act, the less power. Success isn't emotional, it's strategic. It doesn't care if you're tired. It doesn't care if you're scared. It doesn't care if you're waiting on the perfect moment. The only language it understands is effort. The only thing it salutes is follow through. And it keeps track of your decisions long after your feelings have faded. You can lie to yourself with good intentions, but you can't fake action. Action tells the truth. It reveals whether you really want it or not, because if you did, you'd already be moving. You wouldn't still be waiting for a better idea, a better time, a better mood. You'd be in the trenches, building, working, refining. Intentions are internal. They live in your head and heart. Action is external. It puts your hands to work. It applies pressure to your thoughts and brings them into the physical world. And only what exists in the physical world can produce real results. Until then, your intentions are just silent prayers with no power. The scoreboard of life doesn't count what you meant to do. It only reflects what you did. It measures your moves, not your motives. It tracks your habits, not your hopes. And if you want to win, you have to put points on the board, not with declarations, but with discipline, not with dreams, but with direction and delivery. Success doesn't respond to explanations. It responds to execution. You can justify your delay explain your fears, and rationalize your distractions, but success doesn't care. It only yields to the person who shows up with consistency and courage, the one who does what others only talk about doing. The harsh truth is that many people will die with good intentions. They'll be buried with plans they never acted on, gifts they never used, books they never wrote, businesses they never launched. Not because they lacked the ability, but because they mistook desire for action and thought wanting it was the same as working for it. Nothing shifts until you do. Nothing builds until you move. Nothing succeeds until you act. Intention might feel safe, but it produces nothing. It keeps you stuck in cycles of planning, pondering, and procrastinating. Action, however, breaks those cycles. It initiates change, it puts force behind your faith, and creates the momentum that intention never will. Your obedience is not just about you. It's bigger than your comfort, your plans, or even your personal success. Your obedience is tied to other people's deliverance, their direction, their destiny. When you move in alignment with what God has called you to do, you open doors that other people are waiting to walk through. You become the vessel through which their breakthrough is delivered, not because you're perfect, but because you are willing. There are people assigned to your life, people whose answers are locked up inside your yes. Your decision to obey doesn't just bless you, it releases something into the atmosphere that gives others permission to rise. The world is waiting for the manifestation of your assignment. When you delay your obedience, you delay someone else's freedom. When you obey quickly, you accelerate someone else's transformation. Obedience is rarely comfortable. It often requires you to step into the unknown, to do what doesn't make sense, to trust without full understanding. But when you obey, God uses that act of faith to create ripple effects far beyond what you can see. You might think you're just starting a podcast, writing a book, opening a business, mentoring a student, but to someone else, that's the lifeline they've been praying for. We live in a world where people are desperate for answers, hungry for direction, thirsty for truth, and you carry something inside of you that was designed to meet that need. Your obedience activates your assignment. Your assignment blesses others. It's a divine chain reaction. When you move, it causes others to move. When you stand, it gives others strength to stand. Your obedience becomes the evidence that God is real to someone who's been doubting. You may not always see the full impact of your obedience right away. Sometimes it feels like you're walking in the dark, hoping your obedience is making a difference. But God sees the bigger picture. He sees the person who will overhear your testimony and decide not to give up. He sees the child who will grow up differently because you broke a generational cycle. He sees the family that will be restored because you decided to forgive. Every time you obey, you are planting seeds of breakthrough in someone else's life. Your courage teaches others what's possible. Your consistency builds bridges for others to cross. Your sacrifice creates space for someone else's blessing. You may feel ordinary, but your obedience carries extraordinary power. Too often, we make obedience about ourselves, what it will cost us, how uncomfortable it will be, what we might lose. But when you shift your perspective and realize that your obedience is an act of service to the people God has assigned to your life, the cost becomes worth it. Obedience is not just about your calling, it's about your impact. There are people whose lives will never be the same because you chose to follow through. You showed up, you spoke up, you gave, you built, you led. And because you did, someone else saw what faith in action looks like. They saw what perseverance looks like. They saw what purpose can produce. Your life became a blueprint, a testimony, a guidepost for what's possible. Obedience is legacy. It's not always loud or public, but it's always powerful. It leaves fingerprints on people you may never meet, in places you may never go, in generations you may never see. That's the power of obedience. It transcends the moment and echoes through time. It shifts bloodlines, redefines futures, and alters eternal outcomes. Sometimes obedience looks like starting something new, and other times it looks like staying faithful where you are. Sometimes it's launching out into the deep, and other times it's digging deeper where you've been planted. Either way, your obedience builds spiritual infrastructure that others will one day walk on with ease. You don't need to feel ready to obey. You just need to be willing. Willingness is the only qualification God requires for obedience. He doesn't ask for perfection. He asks for surrender. And in that surrender, he does more through your life than you could ever do on your own. What you release in obedience, he multiplies in grace. Obedience is the language of trust. When you trust God enough to obey, even when it's hard, even when it's unclear, you declare with your life that his will is better than your comfort. And when you live that way, other people take notice. They see the fruit. They feel the shift. They witness the evidence. And it sparks something in them they didn't even know they needed. We were never meant to live in isolation. God designed us to be connected, to influence, to encourage, to lead. Your obedience places you in the divine flow of that design. It positions you not just to receive, but to release. Not just to be blessed, but to be a blessing. Your obedience unlocks a current that others can step into and ride through their own breakthrough. Some of the most powerful moments in Scripture happened because someone obeyed without full understanding. Abraham obeyed and became the father of nations. Moses obeyed and set a people free. Esther obeyed and saved her people. Jesus obeyed and redeemed the world. What if your obedience is the link in the chain of someone else's freedom story? You may think your story is too messy, too broken, too small to make a difference. But God uses obedient vessels, not perfect ones. Your willingness to obey, especially in the face of fear, doubt, or lack, becomes a testimony in itself. It shows others that obedience is possible for them too, even in imperfection. Don't underestimate the power of your yes. It might feel insignificant now, but in God's hands, it becomes a catalyst for change. It becomes the open door someone else was praying would appear. Your yes creates space for their yes. Your move gives them permission to move. Your obedience gives them language for their own leap of faith. You are not the only one connected to your calling. There are people whose next step depends on you taking yours. Your faith in motion becomes their roadmap. Your obedience becomes their hope. When you walk in what God told you to do, you carry the key that unlocks doors for others to walk through freely.